Hello everyone, my name is Eddie Pate and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about PlayStation 5 prices. So as we all know, the PlayStation 5 is an extremely popular console. It was released in November 12th, 2020 in several different countries, but took until the next week to make a worldwide release. And even though the PlayStation 5 has already been out for over a year now, it's still really hard to get your hands on one, and the supply is low while the demand remains high. And just to put into perspective how popular the PS5 is right now, as of October 28th of this year, 2021, there have already been 14.3 million PS5 sales, which is pretty insane. And moving on to the pricing part, the PlayStation 5 is pretty fairly priced, in my opinion, at $500 for the disc-based version, which can run either physical or digital copies of games, or $400 for the no-disc version, which can only run digital games. And if you look at the right, you can see the predecessors of the PlayStation 5, which would be the original PlayStation, the PS2, PS3, and PS4. And if you compare the prices of these consoles and just try to adjust for inflation and how technology has changed over time, I would definitely say this is a pretty fair price. And the price of the games have obviously gone up too. They've been pretty rigid, but they've only now started going up to $70 for the AAA games, simply because it costs so much money to make these games. A lot of effort are being put into them. But yes, gaming is quite the expensive hobby nowadays. So that is something to keep in mind if you ever plan to get into it. But even if you did want to get into it, again, getting a PS5 is going to be quite a Herculean task. Moving on to manufacturing costs. The PlayStation 5 costs about $450 to make for Sony, simply because the raw materials are pretty expensive. So what goes into the $450 would be the fans, the heatsink, the motherboard, the CPU, and the SSD, as well as a few other miscellaneous parts, such as some screws and bolts, and some of the plastic as well. And so Sony has actually been operating at a loss manufacturing these consoles, but that is obviously compensated by the purchase of the video games, because no person is ever going to buy the console and just leave it at that. They're always going to be getting a bunch of games over the years for the console as well. But it's still important to keep in mind that the PlayStation 5 is expensive for Sony to manufacture, which is part of the reason why the PlayStation 5 has the pretty high price tag. Moving on to competitors, Sony really only has two competitors, and that would be Microsoft with their Xbox and Nintendo with their, current Nintendo Switch. Looking at the prices between the Xbox and the PlayStation is actually very similar, with the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 standard version both being $500, but the Xbox Series S is $300, and that is pretty much the same as the PlayStation 5's digital version, which is the same in that they're only able to run digital games. But as you can see, there is a $200 discrepancy here with the Xbox as opposed to the PlayStation, which is only a $100 difference between the two versions. And the price of the video games are the same. And with the Nintendo Switch, it's quite different. And there is a bit of a different standard just because it is a pretty funky console. It's got a lot of different things going on for it. but the PlayStation is $200 more than the standard Nintendo Switch, which is a pretty substantial amount. But the Nintendo Switch OLED version, as you can see on the right, that is $350. And really the only difference there is enhanced graphics for the handheld version. But most people still play on the TV anyway, so not sure if that's worth it. But the price of Nintendo Switch games range from $50 to $60 and have never been $70. So hopefully that will remain the same in the near future. But for now, Nintendo Switch is a lot more affordable compared to PlayStation 5. And obviously, if you take a look at what the Nintendo Switch has to offer, it demands a lot less components, and so the manufacturing cost is much lower than the PlayStation 5, which has a bunch of different parts. And another reason why the PlayStation 5 is the price it is will be due to supply and demand. Obviously, the supply is very low and the demand is very high as a result. Scalpers are very common right now. Even a year later, PlayStation 5s are being sold on eBay for double the retail price, and scalpers are making a pretty good profit off this too for people that are impatient or not fortunate enough to get their hands on one at a retail price. And I know for myself, I had to pre-register my credit card information to 7 or 8 different retailer websites. I would have a bunch of notification systems on my phone and on my computer, and I'd always be ready as soon as I could for the notifications so I could try to get my hands on a PS5. Because what these scalpers do is they set up bots so that when a PlayStation 5 becomes available, the bot will just automatically add it to the cart and purchase it at a rate far faster than any human could ever do. And so, as you can see, the man on the left in that Instagram post has obviously set up a bot to get his hands on all those PlayStation 5s. And because of that, the demand is even higher because a few people are able to kind of cheat the system and buy more than one PlayStation 5, which really kind of does ruin it for everyone, but definitely does reinforce the idea of supply and demand being pretty crazy for the PlayStation 5 right now. And another reason why the PlayStation 5 has that supply and demand issue is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. When everyone was locked in their homes and didn't really have much to do, video games were a really good solution for people. And a 2020 survey that happened in March actually showed that people who played video games before the pandemic played 45% more during the pandemic, just showing how much of an impact video games had on people. And surprisingly, 2/3 of Americans played video games during the pandemic, which is a lot higher than I expected, because I was always used to the notion that the video games were mainly for kids and for young adults and not much beyond that. But the truth is that a lot of parents are playing video games with their kids. And yeah, it's great family fun. And the truth is that the audience has really been broadened substantially, simply because a lot of the games that have been coming out are not always super competitive or very like nerdy in nature, but just very like universally appealing, like Animal Crossing or Mario Kart. It's just something that anybody can pick up and enjoy, no matter who you are. And so, as you can see in the chart below, the number of people that play video games has increased by quite a lot. So that is another reason why the PlayStation 5 is much more expensive, is because so many more people are trying to get their hands on one. And next, we are going to move on to the restrained launch strategy that Sony took on. And pretty much what that is that Sony intentionally sold PlayStation 5s at a lower rate because they knew that they needed to save money on production costs. And they were trying to wait out the higher prices of raw materials and other goods that they needed to manufacture the PlayStation 5s. And part of this is because there is a current global shortage of chips. Semiconductors are not so easy to get your hands on right now. And obviously the PlayStation 5 needs those, as well as there is also a global shipping crisis, which is still going on right now. And that obviously makes it harder for Sony to get their materials shipped to them so that they can make the PlayStation 5s, and also makes it harder for PlayStation 5s to get shipped to people. So just the whole supply chain is kind of struggling right now, and there's just so much competition going on to get certain things shipped around the world, which has obviously made things very difficult. And so that's the end of my presentation. I hope you learned something about the PlayStation 5 and why the price is the way it is. And yeah, thank you.